Well, hello and welcome to Learning Technologies Autumn Forum 2025. And it's good to see so many people from all around the world. We've seen people all over the UK. There are people from Finland, and I'm not even going to mention Mauritius because it's far too cold to think about that. I hope you're all well and looking forward to today's session. I absolutely am. I think the word legend gets thrown around too much, but I genuinely believe we have an absolute learning legend with us today. Many of you will have seen Laura, spoken to Laura, read her books, but some of you may be meeting her for the first time today. And if so, please let us know in the chat if this is the first time you've been on one of our forums or indeed coming across the content today. So welcome. You will notice many of you have already found the chat, but feel free to pop anything you like in the chat as the session progresses. If you do have any questions, if you use the questions tab, it just makes it easier for us to find them. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome the legend that is Laura Overton. Welcome to Learning Technologies Autumn Forum, Laura. How are you today?
Good, Anthony. Thank you so much. Hopefully this session is going to be about making legends of everyone who's in the room today. So I'm really excited about hearing what's going on in the chat room, and I really want to encourage people to chat today. So I really appreciate that introduction.
No, not a
I don't
problem
know
at
if
all.
I can live up to that kind of like hype, but I'll give it a go. I am
Wow,
sweating in the
why not?
morning, so you've got to give me a bit of a bit of a chance
Well,
to get
that's it. Yeah, we'll add to the caffeine boost with a little bit of energy on the session. So I'm very much looking forward to this session. I think it's got a fabulous description. I'm looking forward to how I can become a hero in learning myself. So I'm going to hand over the floor to you now, Laura. I will be in the background, so if anybody does pop anything in the chat, I can very quickly get to that. So if anybody watching wants to put anything in, I'll be keeping an eye on that. I'll pop back in later. But in the meantime, have a great session, Laura, and I'll see you soon.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And look, it's great to be here with you this morning. And I'm just really excited. I've been involved with Learning Technologies show since it started, basically. And there's so much innovation. And when people come together under the LT banner, we get so much passion, so many new ideas, so many fresh thinking. And I'm really excited about that today. So I want you to share your thoughts, your views, your questions in the chat room at any time. And we will try and get to those wherever we can, because today it's about unleashing your inner L&D hero. And the reason I chose this title is because I have spent 30 years of my career in learning and development. I was one of those rare people who joined straight from university because I was passionate about the way people learn and how we can help them be their better selves in the world of work. So for me, spending time hanging out in this industry has been the greatest privilege. And everyone I meet, I'm astounded at what you're achieving under the constraints that you're achieving. And yet today, we're often finding ourselves in a lot of very disruptive kind of spaces. There's always a conversation about transformation. There's always a conversation about change. There's always a conversation about technology. And sometimes it can be overwhelming. And today, I want us to explore why we're excited about our industry and what we can contribute to this marvelous world of learning and development. So all heroes have a vision. You know, Batman's vision was never again. He didn't want to see what he'd witnessed in his childhood. Wonder Woman, you can see how old I am here. Her vision was about peace for all. Marcus Rashford is about no child going hungry. It's a kind of a vision that most heroes have. And I would love to know in the chat room what your vision is. What kind of three words describe the future of learning and development that you want to be part of? Why is it that you're here? What do you want to have happen in your world of learning and development? If it was all down to you, what is it that really, really, really inspires you? And Anthony, I know we didn't discuss this, but I'm going to ask you, can you come back on mic for just a quick moment and just tell me about why you're here? What's your vision? While we help give people a little bit of a sense of what's what you're passionate about.
Great one. So, do you know what? I think I want the same future I've always wanted, Laura. Is um, I want to see us making a real difference. And that's why I got into this industry in the first place. And it's almost like the Holy Grail, isn't it? How do we make sure that what we're doing has a real impact? Really helps us move the businesses that we're working forward, but also our individuals, and helps them grow and develop. So yeah, the future for me is where it's really clear that what we do in learning makes a difference.
I love it, and Anthony, that's coming through in the chat as well. I love Rachel kicking us off there. Thank you, Rachel, because it's always great when someone comes in for lovely a human-centered connection. Making that
Love
difference to
that.
the people, and James picks up on that with fairness as well. Growth mindset. I think that's really interesting. I like to pick up on mindset for us because
Mm,
often we don't look after ourselves when we're in this space as well. Nadia, yeah, great, helping people to perform at their best. For Andrew, it's about how we create stories. Andrew, it's like, why are we doing that? I'd love to know
mm,
the why behind this. I love the fact that people want to do things in an engaging, innovative way, but I'd love to know your why as well. Why do you want to do this? What kind of motivates you to want to tell the stories, to want to engage? What are we looking to achieve there? Sarah, love that example there of making the world a kinder place and access to
yeah,
all.
I love that.
Inclusivity, really interesting. Anything else there, Anthony, that's kind of grabbed your attention?
I like Holly's. I'd like people in my workplace to think, "Ooh, L&D," not, "Oh no, more to do."
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And Andrew Jacobs talking about us being a business function. Now that might not
Yeah.
sound sexy, but it actually could release a hell of a lot of potential for us as an industry as well. So I really like that one, Andrew. Thank you so much. I love all of these. You know why? Because they are your passion. They're the things that you want to see happening, and that's why we come together in such a kind of passionate industry,
Mm.
because we want to see change in our world of work. And so love you to keep sharing your thoughts and ideas in the chat, and I really appreciate that. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because, we're getting a lot of bad rap in learning and development. And I think one of the things for me is, it is about all of these things. It is about performance. It is about engagement. It is about making a difference. It is about inclusivity. But for me, my three words have been for a while now is the fact that I want to be part of a profession that helps others be equipped and ready. A profession, absolutely. We're a business. We are professional. We should be credible in the organisations that we're working with. But our role as being those who help others be equipped and ready allows us to be help others be equipped to perform today, equipped to be able to do their job, and ready to be able to perform and shape and adapt for whatever their role is tomorrow. So for me, I am super passionate about the fact that we as learning professionals are creating spaces where individuals, teams, and organizations potentially can be better, can be equipped and ready to be their really best, their best in the future and for today. But I don't just want to be part of it. I want to call on us to say, actually, whatever role we have, however new we are in the industry, however long we've been in the industry, however disillusioned, however excited, we as individuals are the ones that are going to be shaping our industry moving forward. It isn't AI that's going to be shaping our industry. It isn't the technology. They all influence what we do, but us as individuals, our vision, our passion, I believe, are going to be shaping us as a profession moving forward. And that for me has been something that I've become very, very, very focused on in the last 5 years. Some of you who've been around long enough may know the fact that I've actually been researching learning and development, high performing, powerful teams that get through the end goals with real force and with real energy and with real impact, real performance. I've been researching how those people use tools and technologies, approaches, models for over 20 years now. And funny enough, Anthony, haven't written a book until now. And it's only recently that I've been thinking, we know so much about our industry.
Yeah.
There's so much evidence, so much research, so many great ideas, so many people to talk to, so many networks to be part of. And yet, very rarely do we actually feel we got the opportunity to do something different. So I wanted to say, okay, what can we learn from the past in order to help us to shape the future? And that's really where the L&D Leader book, which was only out last week, so it seems a bit weird talking about it in this context with LT friends, is about all of us as leaders, all of us as people who are able to shape our industry in the tiny sphere of influence that we may have in the larger shape of our organization, or even in terms of the shape of our industry in itself. But the challenge is, and I've seen it over the last 20 years, it feels very rocky at the moment, but we have been living in a fit of an environment of continual disruption. Certainly since I've been involved in this industry, and certainly since I've been researching it since 2003. My first report started, the world is changing so fast. I got involved with learning technologies back in the 80s because the world of IT was changing so fast. So this kind of sense of continual change, continual disruption. I've seen our field go through the 9/11 tragedy. Seen our field go through recessions in 2007, 2008. Our budgets have been cut. Our tools and technologies have come in. Lot of change. Continual disruption. And in fact, I think for us to be our superheroes, it's rather than wait for something to steady down, it's never going to be. It's like, how do we work out how to turn that disruption into our advantage? When something shifts, when we make progress, something else breaks. And when something breaks, it's disrupted, it creates a level of energy. There's a level of momentum. Something's going on somewhere in the organization to make me feel disrupted. And maybe I might be able to do a tiny little bit of disruption myself. Because when we actually embrace disruption, when we embrace this continual changing and say, you know what, let's work out how we work and live in that space, that is when we get a chance to actually use the energy that's created by that disruption to be able to shape what it means for us to be a learning and development professional in this current world of work. So, for me, I say embrace disruption. Let's give it a go, and love to see your thoughts and your views. And if there's a disruption in your life that's going on, please share that, or in your world of work that you're seeing that's giving you an advantage. Please share that. Let's encourage each other. There's and Chris saying about 2005 being the biggest year of change, but this sense of next year's going to be a bigger year of change, and the year after, and the year after. And yeah, what I'm finding as learning professionals, we have got an amazing opportunity to help others cope with that, and we need to release that inner sense of being able to cope with it ourselves, our inner hero. And because we've got choices when disruption comes, and I've seen it over the years, we take cover, we say, oh, yes, I'll do something. But overall, we stay within our boundaries. In fact, we withdraw into the familiar world under the nice dry umbrella and wait for it to go over. But what I found is the high performing learning teams over the years are those who actually say, you know what, let's see what this weather can do for us. Let's embrace it. They take notice of what's going on around them and they use it in a way to take action. So what I wanted to do is to maybe share a little bit of a story with you, because hopefully you're getting this sense that I believe that you are the hero. And you may or may not feel like it at the moment, but I believe that you are because you're in this world of work. You're doing your job, you're coping with the changes that are going on all the time, and you've got a passion for making a difference in people's lives. So I want today to help you see that you don't have to be some megastar to make a difference in the world that you're in. And I'm going to be using some of the stories from the book. And you know, I wrote this book. I invited Michelle to write with me because Michelle Ocker's down in Australia. If you haven't seen her podcast or listened to it, Learning Uncut, you understand how incredibly knowledgeable, insightful, and practical this amazing woman is. And Michelle and I got together to say, okay, well, how do we layer all of this evidence to understand how we can be different in the world of work, how we can shape the future of learning rather than being shaped by our environment? And we interviewed over 40 people. We interviewed Cameron Hedricks, who was the CEO of Citibank over in New York. We interviewed people who are doing amazingly high level jobs down in Australia and different retail organizations. We also interviewed people that people have never heard of. And I want to share this story. And I did check with Russell before I asked if I could share this story. It is in the book of Russell. Now, Russell Woods isn't on the screen. He is not a big influencer. And in fact, he spent the majority of his working career working as a tennis coach, working with young people. And he decided he wanted to move into learning and development if he could. And he managed a few years ago, it's not that long, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, to move into the field. And he currently works as an L&OD partner at a housing group, Asta. So not-for-profit organization, only about 3,000 people, not a massive learning team, definitely not a massive learning budget. And his boss asked him to say, look, I think we need to have some succession planning here at Asta. And, Russell could have gone anywhere to start looking at, well, what does that mean? How do I get succession planning in? What are high performers? And looking at the standard way of us thinking about succession planning. But, what he wanted to do, didn't just want to say, the things were going on in Asda that made them need to think more clearly about this. There was disruptions going on in the business that made them think, actually, maybe we need succession planning. But what Russell did was rather go out and follow standard models already out there, look at what everyone else is doing. He looked inside the organization. He started to talk to people. He started to talk to everyone in the organization, the administrators through to the senior people. And what he surfaced was that there was a whole range of skills that typically were only allocated those people who were up and coming leaders, needed by everyone. Of course, they hadn't got the budget to do that. And I first met Russell because just happened to catch a LinkedIn post where he said, "Listen, I'm trying something out, guys. I'm just trying this out. This is what's happening." And what he did is he put in a series of little tiny skill sprints, 15 minutes, little pieces of content. Wrapped around it some stories that he used AI to use to create some environment, to make it real for the people in the organization. He put in some reflection points. He set up a little bit of community in the spaces that they were already in. And he thought, you know what, just for a couple of weeks, I'm just going to try this out as an experiment and see what happens. And in those 2 weeks, what he found was he was hoping maybe 20 people might be interested. Over 73 people got interested in what he was doing. And, when saw this, I just thought, this is the small things that we can do. It's not big. It didn't cost a lot of money. If it failed, it didn't matter. This is a little Trojan mouse that he kind of released into the organization just to see if an idea worked. And, what I loved when I saw his post on LinkedIn, I asked if I could interview him for the book. And he just said, look, Laura, experimenting is one of the things I love about working in L&D. It allows me to explore, it allows me to make a difference. And some of the personal stories that have come back from his organization are absolutely powerful, in terms of what he was doing. So, what I'm saying is small things. We can absolutely do the small things to make a difference with people and to explore and to experiment. And a part of that is unleashing our inner hero. And Russell being Russell, he had his background in coaching, he had this new experience of learning and development. That made him unique. And your experience in your field makes you unique. And, I'm very, very strong believer after looking and interviewing, did over 40 interviews recently, but over the years, it's not necessarily, as I say, the budget or the location or how forward thinking we are, but it's how we turn up at work makes a difference. How Russell turned up at work, talking to people, listening to people, our energy, our enthusiasm for wanting to help people be better. Our presence influences the field around us. It influences the person we're talking to at the coffee machine. It influences who we're with when we're facilitating an online session. It influences how we work with our stakeholders, our managers. Our presence is an influence. And how we choose to use our presence and our background, our experience is down to us. It's not down to anything else that's happening around us. But also our expertise, how that grows. That it's a continual cycle. Our presence allows us to be able to build our expertise. Our expertise allows us to increase our influence. These are all superpowers that we do possess. It's just that we don't recognize them, we don't activate them, and we don't lean into them. So, Russell spotted an opportunity, spotted something that was going on that others didn't see, his bosses didn't see at that particular time. And I'd just like you to maybe reflect for a moment. Has there ever been a moment where you've spotted an opportunity to encourage learning that maybe other people had missed in your organization or in your field? I'd love to see in the chat room what your perspectives are on that particular question. Do you recognize that sometimes you do spot opportunities, not that you've done anything about them, but you've spotted an opportunity? I'd love to actually see what you're saying here. Naveed, you talked about upskilling and expertise rising above the crowd. This is really essential, but for us not to be overwhelmed with that. Part of our expertise is about how we notice what is going on, and that's something we can start now before we've even had training course. Um, don't need a piece of e-learning to teach us how to look around us and spot things. So I'd love to know your perspectives on that, and to share that with each other in the chat room. Are there times when you've spotted something where you've jotted it down, whether you've noticed something, maybe in the classroom or whatever? So do share that, because I think it's a good way of us learning from each other. Okay. How do we activate our superpowers? This is the thing that I'd like us to concentrate on for a few moments before we go into thinking about some of the things that we can do. Actually, thank you so much for your some of your thoughts. Like Catherine, like Russell, start working with people, start going and sitting with them for half an hour. I love that. I absolutely love that. And I expect you found out quite a lot. I'm not asking you to share, Catherine, by doing that, but what a fantastic small thing that you can do. Your presence, just being there, listening, Catherine, is like Russell, gives you so much insight, so much information. So I really appreciate you sharing that one. Rachel talking about shifting the approach of your learning from punishing rewarding engagement instead of punishing it. Yes, celebrate when people do things. Oh, Russell really did that. He didn't think I must engage people with my program because it was just an experiment. But as people were engaging, it was amplified in the community and celebrated in the community. Wow, what a fantastic idea that is there, Rachel. Thank you so much for that. Sarah, peer-to-peer learning, spotting what's already going on. Love it. Love it, love it. Seeing what's already happening is something that really can help us it's not disruptive to our people engaging with us. It's about us working out how we better engage with each other. And it's starting to think differently about our world of work. So please keep sharing your good ideas in here, because I'd love you to act on one of these. One of the ideas from your peers in the panel, it will be if you can take one of those and just act on it when we finish, then that would be amazing. So I want to talk about how do we activate our own inner hero. And I'm not going to be talking about the skills and the expertise and everything that we have externally, all the things that we have to do for others. But I want to talk about how we think about ourselves. In tennis, I call it the inner game. The game that we play in our own head is as powerful. In fact, it's more powerful in releasing our individual superhero powers than anything else. And this is some of the things that we were interviewing for in the book. And what we found is that, particularly during COVID, when we were interviewing people during COVID, those that were surviving and thriving through COVID, it wasn't what they were doing, it was more about how they were thinking and their approach to their work. And we noticed at that time, how we think about our work and ourselves influences how we feel about our work and ourselves, influences our actions. It's that continual cycle and oh, shows how old I am, computer-based training, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, that cycle there that we have, of, sort of like sometimes we have to think, we can think differently, but sometimes it's our actions that help us be different. And for me, those organizations that survived and thrived and the ones we interviewed for the book were bold learning professionals. They were courageous. They were curious, but they weren't brassy bold people. They were people who were smart bold. They didn't shoot from the hip thinking, I've seen something at an LT conference and I'm just going to give it a go. I'm going to try. Russell didn't do that. He went out, he listened, he saw before he tried his experiments. He wasn't this kind of like, let's just blast people with a new idea and then hope that they engage, or market the hell out of it and hope that they engage. This is about being smart bold rather than brassy bold. And what do I mean by that? And I want you to kind of make a note of this, because this is language I think you can use in your teams, and language you can use with yourself, even if nobody else is asking you. I want to ask you if your B for bold, is business first. I want to ask you, and that's why I love picking up on Andrew's comment about us being a business function, is that, how do you see your value? When you think about celebrating the value you bring to your organization, do you celebrate the activity, the efficiencies, the money saves, the engagement, the processes? Or do you celebrate and look for opportunities to make a difference in people's lives, performance, talent, careers? The stuff in the orange is the stuff that the business is interested in. And being business first isn't well, it is about performance consulting. It is about having better conversations with the business. It is about using the language. It is all of that. But the mindset of business first is about which direction do we naturally face? If we're naturally facing always into how we see our value in terms of activity, efficiency, cost saving, even when we're talking to the business, we'll always be trying to pull the business into our way of thinking. But if we face constantly thinking, actually, how can this help the organization, the individual, the team? What's important? What's the disruption that's going on in the team right now? That's what we mean by facing business first. And this is just a really simple graphic. And I'm going to give you my email at the end. So if you want any of these graphics and also any of the tools and links to anything, you can just email me with what you want and I'll send it out to you. But this graphic just helps us remind ourselves daily in every action that we're doing, which direction am I facing in right now? And I'll just leave it up there for a moment. I'll just leave it in a little bit of quiet. I don't say even want you to go in the chat room, but without saying anything to anyone, which space are you most comfortable in operating in? Which space is your natural way of facing? Because it's not that's bad. It's just that to be bold, to be smart bold, we need to be aware that we might need to turn around and face business first. Just going to leave that up there for a moment. Screen grab it, put it on your phone. This fundamentally, it makes a difference over the last 20 years as to how you approach your work, how you think about your work, how you see disruption, how you see other people around you. The way you think about your value will influence how you turn up at work, how you act at work, and also how you feel about work as well. So I'm just want to kind of flag that out there. The second one that I want to share with you under bold and being courageous is about us being open-minded. Open-minded about the fact that, okay, we may have a system that's worked for us in the past, but will it work for us in the near future? We may have worked with a certain type of person in the past, but do we need to, like Catherine said, go out and meet other people that think differently about the same problem? Because when you're facing business first, you realize it's not just you that's worrying about rollout of AI, about inclusion, about succession. There are other people who care about these things. And then suddenly you could be open minded. Well, how do they approach them? How can we work together? Is there a new way of doing this? Being open minded also means being open minded about ourselves. And this inner reflection, I think, is so vital. And it doesn't get talked about a lot at conference, our ability to look inside ourselves and to think, am I being bold? And is the way I turn up at work actually allowing me to shape the future of work that I want, or am I actually just feeling like a victim? Now, sometimes about being open-minded is sometimes about being letting go. Um, I love everyone. I love you all who said it's performance first, but sometimes we get so hung up on performance, ROI, that we think it's too difficult, it's too complex, because it's complex working in the world of business. There's constant change going on. There's all kinds of people interfering with your plans, and actually us always feeling that we have to have ROI behind our programs before we can have credibility to talk to the business is an attitude. I want us to be more open-minded about letting that go, because we need to be looking at data, absolutely, but as a way of improving ourselves, improving our relationship, improving our services, not just proving it. So this desire to constantly prove ourselves, I think, can be limiting us. Silos, I don't do, that's not my job. We've got to work across silos. There's so much that's out there on that. Go and look it up, use AI, explore how you can break out of silos, even within HR. Take a look at that. Are there experiments you can do? Your past. Are there things that have failed you in the past that actually right now will be perfect, but you're frightened to take them on again? Are there things that you've done really well in the past that you think, well, because I've done well then, that's going to be perfect for today? We need to be able to let go in order to be open minded. So that's both business first, open minded, leading and learning. Really starting to think about, how do we experiment? How do we test and learn? How do we explore things? How do we do these little Trojan mice? The idea of a Trojan mouse is that you can release something, release an idea, test a little hypothesis, not prove a pilot or try and get buy into a solution, but to test little things. Will people come together in, as Catherine said, and others in peer-to-peer groups? Are they already going there? What would happen if I turned up where they are rather than asking them to turn up where I am? Let me try that for a week. Little tiny experiments that will allow us to explore, become more open-minded, more expansive, more connected, more relevant to the organization, because we are willing to explore with the organization rather than provide services for the organization. Now, I know sometimes our organizations don't want us to do that. We can do that for ourselves. We can lead and learn for ourselves. And that's what I'm noticing with high performing learning leaders. They are as constrained by organizational issues as the rest of us, but they take things on from themselves. In such an insightful interview we had with Cameron Hedrick, it's in the book, where we asked him about how he leads his team. Now, he's at the top of his career, incredible influence, very well known across Citibank, around the world, for the work that he does. And he said, Laura Michelle, what I realized I had to do, I learned the name of all of the different biases, and I started to look inwards. I started to explore what that means for me. And by naming things, he was able to start to recognize things in himself. And then he started to talk that language with his team, and he started experimenting with the team, and the team started to be able to recognize their own biases. So by being open-minded about himself, he was able to experiment and explore new language with the team. Now that's an experiment, that's leading and learning, shifting the way that his team was thinking about learning and development. And then the fourth area, under being smart, bold, courageous, bold that makes a difference in the world of learning and development, is our intentionality, being deliberate, being evidence informed, absolutely being risk aware. being conscious of some of the things that, um, the data, what data is being gathered, and how do we analyze that? How do we work with that? But also, what are we seeing around us? What are we seeing in our culture? What's the rest of the data in our organization? How do we see how people learn? One of the foundational elements in terms of expertise that we suggest in the book is the thing that keep us stable in a continual change is our ability as a profession to understand how human beings learn, make connections, adapt, flex, and grow, building our learning science muscle. Because as long as we're there, it's because humans are there. And if humans aren't there, then they can obviously train the AIs, they all can do, but we're there because we're there to help humans be equipped and ready. So we need to know how humans learn. That's a foundational element of our evidence informed. And being digitally curious as well, being deliberate about, can a tool or a technology allow me to open up my mind even further? So being deliberate is about being intentional. It's about using this language. It's about reflecting on this language. It's about observing yourself. It's about being risk aware, and I think the future of learning is going to be shaped by smart, bold individuals. Um, Now, you are probably going to be having some questions coming up soon. So, please ask questions in the chat. I would love to hear a little bit more from you in the chat. I'd love to hear your observations in the chat. But because in about 15 minutes, we will close off. That's going to show you how bold worked for Russell, if I may. Um, Business first, he's thinking about, actually, it's not what does the HR team need, but what does the business need, that moved him into starting to talk to right across the business. Well, what does this mean? What do these new skills mean? What does it mean for you to be ready in order to move into your next job? What do you need? And so his business first activated his influence because he started to go out into the world of work to listen, to explore. So it was one of his, he's always got his influence. It's whether we use it. And being business first was one of the ways that he activated his influence. Being open-minded activated his expertise even more. He'd been on a Laurel Waldron build forces with your brain event. If you don't know that work, please go and look at it. It's an amazing program, and it really helped us learn how we learn and therefore how we can help others. So that was fresh in his mind. It wasn't a big thing, but it was fresh in his mind. How can I explore how to use that? He also was open minded because his organization was constrained. He had not been given budget to go away and run a whole series of skills for all of the organization. He was constrained by the current tools, the current technologies. And so bringing those, being open-minded about how he could think about sprints, how he could think about the way he was doing reflective practice, using community, sharing stories, using AI, built his expertise. And that then built his influence. You see how this can work. Leading and learning, by doing the presence, by saying, you know what, I'm intentionally just going to be doing this for 4 weeks, just for a moment to explore how it happens. Having 73 people come in and starting to share their stories, how this experience was stopping them from handing in their resignation, or, some really life-changing moments that were being shared in this small community that had been created. Leading and learning activated his presence even more in that environment, and being deliberate, being intentional, obviously activated all of those different areas as well, because he wasn't just going, oh, I've got an idea. It was very focused. It was very exploratory. It was very, very intentional and deliberate. And, this is a small project. Russell wouldn't have said I've been thinking in that way, but I'm recognizing patterns in him that I have seen year after year, decade after decade, with individuals who are making a difference and shaping the environment they're in, whether they have been given the influence and the permission to lead or not. And Sarah Lindsay, who I was presenting with last week from PricewaterhouseCoopers, who has journeyed with me on this 20-year research program, we were sharing again once a lot of learning last week, and we were talking. She said, we need to have the courage to lead without position. And maybe that's what Russell's doing. That's what the superheroes in us are able to do. Even if it's only leading ourselves, let's be bold. Now, I want to spend just a quick moment on the idea of the Trojan mice. It's I can send you a link if you're interested in this, but it's these small, tiny experiments that you can do, little things that you can do. Now, in the chat, you will have seen other things that people are doing. Has that inspired you? Could you try something? Could you explore something? It's about exploring ideas, not solutions. Russell had an idea of a skill sprint. I wonder if that would actually help people in our organization. He didn't have permission to do it, but he just explored an idea rather than try to prove a solution. That's what Trojan might. If it fails, it's even better because then you can learn from it and make sure that you use that data in a different way. So I think for me, I think there's a lot here that we can be thinking about, and I would love to hear any Trojan mice that you've tried as well. I'm glad you liked the image. Thank you, AI, for that. It allowed me to do a few more in here as well. Um, and just to think right now for you about where do you need a breakthrough moment? Where do you need, where is disruption hitting you and you're maybe feeling a little bit crushed. You're maybe feeling that you have to take cover, you have to follow some rules, but you're hungry to break out of that. you know um Share it if you're willing to, because clearly, if you're willing to, other people will be very happy to help you work out. And then to think through, what is it that you might be testing? Are you testing whether people are willing to share with each other? Are you testing whether people come together in community? Are you testing whether their stories can be gathered from a community in order to be evidence for you to think about the impact of your solution? All kinds of different areas that you might be thinking about. Um, these are just little tiny little things that I've seen people do. We're thinking about business first, and you're trying to understand what's going on in an organization or even within your own L&D team. Do you run a little bit of a challenge wall and put post-it notes up for daily frustrations that you can say, okay, how can we work smarter, better, bolder together? Um, Little tiny solution spotlights, brief tiny case studies like Russell do. And one of the things that we suggest that you do in our book is that you take a field notebook, that you start writing down your observations. If you did that just for a week, what are you observing in the world of work? What are you observing in your conversations? And at the end of the week, to say, has that helped you feel more tuned in to what's going on in the business? Has that helped you just by keeping a field notebook to turn around and think more about what's important for the business rather than what's important for me as a learning professional? So here are just some examples of little Trojan mice, and it just would be great if you've got more, please share them. Now, before we close, what I wanted to do is to ask you in the chat room, what stops it? I don't want to put a dampener on what we've been talking about so far, but we've got to be real because sometimes we have to disrupt ourselves. So I'd love to know, maybe in the chat room, what stops us. And Anthony, maybe you might be able to come back in now and just any observations that you've had in like your career about what might stop us from kind of believing in ourselves that we can make a difference.
Yeah, I was reflecting on that. I think sometimes it's easier to just stay in your lane, isn't it? And just go, do you know what? I'll wait. They'll come and say, oh, we need a course on this. I can write a course on that. That's job done. And I think that comes from two places. One, we've probably been put in that place a lot of times in the past. We've got experience of people going, yeah, we've got this project, but we're not going to get you involved yet because we don't need you, and we've got used to that. But also, I think there's an element of risk taking there, isn't there? It's safer to go, you give me the stuff, I'll do the learning, we'll stick to our own thing. So
Yeah.
definitely, and I really like the idea of the Trojan mouse. Maybe we can just do something a little bit different and go, how about this? Let's try this. See what would happen if. And I was
Yeah.
reflecting on a recent project I've been working on, which is a systems implementation, where traditionally what we'd probably do is wait until the system's developed and then they give us all the manuals and we'll spend a couple of days playing with it and then we'll write a course and all of that stuff. And actually, we didn't do any of that. We got in really early in the project, learnt the project as it was, learnt the system as it was being developed, and then that led us to a completely different way of working, which wasn't about courses. It was about resources. It was about drop-in sessions. It was about sitting alongside and just helping people through. And ended up, we did a bit of an email campaign where we actually set weekly challenges and said, right, you've got this great new system. This week, we want you to figure out how to do this. If you get stuck,
Yeah.
we're here. So just
Yeah.
thinking about it slightly differently. But it would have been so easy to just write a manual and some e-learning.
Particularly now we've got AI to help us do
Yeah,
that easy thing even easier and even
yeah.
faster. And I think that's why I wanted to, and I really appreciate you sharing this story with us because, it's you stopped and said, maybe there's a different way, maybe there's a better way, maybe there's a little thing that we can do. And it needs our intervention. It needs our ability to be able to read the room, our
Mm,
ability to read our industry, our
mm,
ability to read ourselves to be able to do that. So I really appreciate that. Sticking with the status quo is something I see so regularly. But the trouble is, in disruptive world, in a continually changing world, we might be sticking with the status quo, but when we're working with humans, we're working in a complex environment. Things are moving all the time.
yeah.
And yes, we need to have some stability, but sometimes we also have stability that also has flex within it as well. And I really love the fact that you shared that story, Anthony.
And I think
Thank you so much.
Rachel's coming up with a very similar thing, not having the clout, just being asked to make an e-learning course. I totally get that, Rachel, sometimes our stakeholders just don't know, they
Yeah,
go back to their safe place as well. So they may go, oh, create some
yeah,
e-learning because that's what they know. So I totally get why we get stuck in that box sometimes.
yeah.
And also
And
Rachel's mentioning imposter syndrome, the
yeah,
can we challenge our stakeholders because they're the experts, right? But they're not
yeah,
experts on learning. So
yeah,
we can use that expert and influence that you talked about earlier, Laura. Let's maybe
yeah.
stretch that influence a little bit more.
Yeah, and our own personal influence as well, because each one of us comes from these different backgrounds. I've
Mm,
shared a bit about mine and a bit about Russell's, but every one of our backgrounds is completely different. And that also shapes the way that we think. And that gives us extra energy, extra insight, a new lens onto a solution as well. We should be using that lens rather than conforming in as well. I think what's really interesting here is about limitations of what we see with other people. Imposter syndrome, absolutely, that's coming through here. And Graham, the pressure of being just one person doing one thing is really tough. It's how do you break out of that and how do you see yourselves differently? I think one of the things that I looked at when I looked about the L&D value spectrum between learning and business value, I'd always looked at it as how we see our own value. But what you, Anthony, and Rachel were saying is how do others see us? So how does
mm,
the business see us? If the business wants us to give a learning value and we want to deliver learning value, that's all very cozy and comfortable for now. Until change their mind. If the business wants business value and actually doesn't see our relevance and we're still looking at learning value, that's danger zone for us.
mm,
But the danger shakes us, it wakes us, it disrupts us, it allows us to think differently, it allows us to be bold.
yeah.
But if we want to see business and the business itself only still sees us as learning, for me, I call that the change maker zone. That's a zone where these little experiments make a difference. That's the
Hmm.
zone where we do need to be bold. We need to be business first. We need to look for different opportunities that we can get involved with and amplify and accelerate that. When both see eye to eye, business and learning leaders both want business value, then there's an opportunity. We start co-creating, we start
Yeah,
working together because
yeah.
we're both working to the same goal and we're both willing to look at each other. What can you bring to the table? What can I bring to the table? How do we work together? It makes it easier for managers to get involved with learning transfer. It makes it easier for us all to say, actually, we're all here to improve sales. That's why Josh Burstyn, and in fact, we also talk about this. And Josh and I talk about enablement. How do we enable the organization to be better? And when we're working to those same business goals, we can be in that co-creator zone. but most of us are in a change maker zone or in a danger or comfort zone. And that's why our superpowers need to be unleashed now, because often we are the ones, as you've been mentioning. Oh, look, another. I love the distraction going on here, Rachel, with the little extra mouse. Please send that to me at the end because I like yours much better than mine. Um, what we are is that we can be our own wall. And if there's anything that you take away from today, is to say, let's break down our own walls. We can't control anybody else. When we think we've got no voice, it means that we stop trying to talk, even to the one person that we might end up having lunch with or have a coffee with during your coffee chats. So, doing the small things to practice talking, to practice being curious, be asking questions. It might be that we're fearful of the spotlight. What if this goes wrong? Trojan mice can really help there. Imposter syndrome, it's for all of us. It means that we're uncertain. We're uncertain, then we're curious, then we're willing to grow. It's an opportunity to step into our future rather than hide from it. So, let's leverage that. Resistance from other people. I have found over the years, and I've seen it in every study that I've read ever. And when we say, why can't we achieve these amazing goals that we've got as a learning profession? It's always about somebody else. The managers don't get it. I haven't been given enough money. Our learners haven't got time. And all of these are absolutely valid, but they take away our ability to say, okay, well, what can we do? Where can we do it? Where can we be bold? When we are that blame culture stops us from energizing a culture of learning, sharing, and innovation. So I think that, I'm just going to put it out there and just name it out there. And obviously, fear of being found out, tall poppy syndrome down in Australia, the fear of, basically the fear of anything, particularly in the world of constant change. But what we're talking about being bold today is about us working on our core. And there are things that we can do to help us be bolder. And I just want to share this with you because we asked people, Michelle and I, and Shannon Tipton, when we were doing this piece of work, when you last made a decision, what helps you be bold? Your last courageous decision. Now, whatever courage looks like for you, if you're talking to a new person or whatever it is, courage is different for all of us. But what helps you be bolder? And what we realized is it was different things to different people. For some, it was like, you know what, I'm bold because I've got such a vision. Your vision that you had at the beginning of this session, that is part of your boldness and helps you to be bold. For me, it was always about having evidence. Because I've been a long time in this career, as a young woman in a male-dominated career in the mid 90s, evidence was my one thing. I was able to join conversations because I was the one that had read the research. I was the one that had read the Gartner reports, the IDC reports, being able to give different perspectives. And I found that people didn't dismiss me as much. So for me, it was always evidence, and that's directed my route ever since then. But when I was talking to Michelle, for her, it was always peer networks, her communities and connections. For others, it might be your mentor, your coach, your buddy. For others, it might be the more practice I have, the more experience I have. For all of us, it's how tired we feel, how strong we feel, how well we feel. But it's not one or other of these things being a safety net for you. You may have a preferred thing that helps you feel bolder. When they're connected together, it creates even more boldness. It creates even more safety for us. So maybe your experiment as a result of being here is to catch up with a mentor or a coach, or to be part of a peer network, or to catch up with somebody who's in this event here today. So that's really where I wanted to leave it. I'm conscious we've got just a few minutes if there are any major questions that have come out. I believe in us. I believe that we are going to be the ones shaping the future. There's going to be a lot talking over the next 2 weeks about transforming. If you haven't seen Don and Egler's presentation on the transformation triangle, you must go re-watch that. Really powerful, positioning us at the business end of the value spectrum. But I would like us to be bold, activate your superpowers, and unleash your hero. This is just a link to my email. So if you want any references if you want a discount code for the book. And I'm not saying that you have to, but if you want it, just ping me a line. If you want, I've got a few toolkits that help you work and do experiments with managers. I've got a lot of different stuff. So just call me, contact me, ask me, and I'll be more than happy to send you whatever I can, because I'm passionate about your journey. And that's it from me.
Fabulous, fabulous. I did just notice a really good point in the chat from Graham, talking about engaging our stakeholders in the outcomes, the performance, rather than trying to bring them into our world and talk about the learning. Absolutely concur with that. You know, that's our bit, right? We can do that, but let's talk about the so what. So if we get this right, what will happen? I think that's a really good way of unlocking stakeholders. So yeah, some really great stuff in the chat. So thanks for all your involvement today, guys. We do have a couple of minutes left if there's anything you wanted to ask Laura. While we're doing that, I'll do a little shameless plug. Our next session is at 11:30 UK time. And it is how AI supports the 6 conditions needed for real learning. So unsurprisingly, a session on AI. I think it would be weird if we weren't talking a lot about AI at the moment. It's making such a big difference to us. So that'll be a brilliant session. Check out the program for all the other sessions that we've got running as well. I thought it was a really interesting session, Laura. I love it when my brain is trying to do listening to you, because it's fantastic, and looking at the chat, because that's also fantastic. It's a real dopamine rush.
I know, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to look at it, and because some of the comments that we've got in here are just, you know, the advice that we give to each other. That's why it's so powerful. Our peer network, it gives us courage, but really our courage is it's hopeless if we just be thinking bold. We have to now act bold.
Yes.
And it's the little things that we need to do. And I know I'd love to know, please, anyone link in with me if you have done experiments, if you start to explore, or if you've used any of the ideas and the stories in the book as well. It would be great to find out from you.
Fabulous. So I think the chat has reached the point where lots of people are saying thank you, which I'm taking as an indication that they've got out of the session what they wanted to, which is always a great sign. Lots of interesting links and things coming through. So before you do leave the chat, maybe have a quick look, have a little trawl through people, make sure you picked up all of the contacts that you want to, because absolutely, to your point, Laura, I think our peer networks are one of our strengths in this industry. So use that as an opportunity. Lovely comment from Jane there. My peer network, friends and family help me feel bold. I like that. I like that a lot. So we are coming up to the end of the time, folks. So it is time to say goodbye. Thank you very much, and not only for attending, but also for the fabulous interaction. Don't forget the next session's at 11:30, how AI supports the 6 conditions needed for real learning. But in the meantime, thank you very much, and have a wonderful day, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you.